and also Eric Williams.
You know, I think Mel, you bring up the most critical point in the whole situation is where do you play him? Talked about the fact that they may want to move Donald Evans out to end. Well, Hugh Douglas basically plays outside. I don't think he'll play inside because he stood up so much. But it looks like the Jets have got a lot of versatility now in the defensive line, trying to replace Jeff Lageman. So you get a guy that you can use maybe in different positions, or is he going to be a tweener that you just can't quite find a home for him?
But one thing that they've done, Joe, as we go to Coach Gottfried in a moment, the speed, they did not really have that on the defensive line. Lageman, who has gone to Jacksonville, and Marvin Washington did not have a good year last year. Washington's a good player, but he didn't have a great year. Not a lot of speed up front. The Jets now had that position when they rush the passer, along with their linebackers, Lewis and Houston, who are good. Let's go up to Coach Gottfried. Central State in Ohio. Any question about the level of competition, or is he ready, Hugh Douglas, to play in the NFL?
The Marauders of Central State. Hugh Douglas, I spent a week with him at the Hula Bowl, and you talk about a guy that keen to play. He did. He wanted to prove a point. He played against Trezell Jenkins, played very well. The only question I have, he's not a linebacker. He's never dropped into coverage. He has to be a defensive end. He has to be able to take on the run. If he can't take on the run, he's a one-down player. Let's go to Chris Fowler in Buffalo.
Coach, I know you had him on your team at the Hula Bowl there. He did play very well against Trezell Jenkins in Michigan. In fact, they got in a scuffle. Jenkins was so frustrated he couldn't block him. At 24 years old, Douglas is a different kind of a player than a lot of guys taken today. He has a wife. He has a kid. He has a father who worked in a steel mine who was disabled. So Hugh Douglas has a lot of mouths to feed. He's going to approach this as seriously and as businesslike as anybody who's drafted. Central State of Ohio, a school that's produced some other guys in the NFL, Vince Buck and Eric Williams. Hugh Douglas will arrive intent on becoming an instant impact player. He's a mature, different kind of a guy than a lot of guys drafted today, Boomer.
Oh, Chris, you know, as a guy that went a few years ago in about this spot, could have been 16, I'll have to check it, hit Huey Richardson to Pittsburgh. Same sort of player, kind of a gamble. Well, not a gamble, but could he play up? Could he play down? I mean, he didn't pan out for the Steelers. You hit or miss with this sort of pick, but this is the sort of player that if you hit, can be really unique. And so the Jets are taking that shot at the athlete. We go from the Jets to the Giants. Is this the start of a running back run? That sounds good, but that's the question.
For years, AT&T's television commercials convinced my mom, my sister, and me not to join MCI savings programs.
Then we heard about MCI's new friends and family, and we decided to try it. So we joined together.
Now, when we spend just $10 a month, we save 50% on all the calls we make to each other.
That's half of what we used to pay on AT&T's basic rate for the same call.
And now we realize that all the time AT&T was telling us not to join MCI, they were charging us America's highest long-distance rate.
On my side, yes it is. Time is on my side.
At 5:01, work time ends and Miller time begins. Because nothing finishes a day like a beer that always finishes smooth. Miller High Life, your time,
yes,
Miller time.
So how's it looking for the Blackhawks?
Well, it's a shorter season. We've had to put things together a little quicker. You know, we had to pick up pace a little bit. But I think the guys adapted pretty well. You know, they've gained half a step.
The Engine, a machine with 750 horsepower savagery and a mind of its own. It praises those that can dance with it. NASCAR on ESPN. Lahane's 500 tomorrow at 3. Strap in.
We are halfway through the first round. Remember, each of the expansion teams gets 2 picks in each of the rounds, except Carolina forfeits a couple of them for tampering a little bit with Dom Capers. But so there'll be 32 picks in this first round, and so we are halfway through. We have the Giants on the clock, but before we get done with the Jets, there are many folks who are watching this right now. Certainly those in the business know that one of the classiest men of all as we do this draft every year, and Classy Men in Football is Dick Steinberg, general manager of the New York Jets. All of us have been thinking about Dick, and since he's been diagnosed with stomach cancer in December, he got some great news yesterday, the best news that he has had in the 4, 5, 6 months since this has happened, and very positive news about some recession of it. And so from all of us and all you fans out there, I just want to let Dick Steinberg know that we're thinking about him. We send our love, and he's been working this week. It's like nothing's going on, and he got some great news this week as well. The Giants are next on the clock, and we have about 8 minutes to go. We have had trades galore here in the first round. Right at the top, the Bengals went up north, taking Carolina's first overall selection, moving down to the 5 spot and picking Ki-Jana Carter. The 49ers went up to the 10 spot where Cleveland was and stole, really, J.J. Stokes, wide receiver, UCLA. Tampa Bay and Philadelphia made a switch. Philly moving up to 7, taking Mike Mamula. Tampa Bay going down to 12, still getting a defensive tackle, a great one in Warren Sapp. And, of course, last night, the Jets made the deal that sent Rob Moore to Arizona, so they end up with a pair of first-round picks, and that second first-round pick that they got from Arizona was the one they used just a couple of moments ago to pick Hugh Douglas, the defensive end, stand-up linebacker type from Central State, the Marauders in Ohio. The Giants are on the clock. 7 minutes to go. Word, Chris Mortensen, that earlier, maybe a week or so, that they had dangled the name Rodney Hampton out there. Whether that was true or not, he's not trade bait at this point. That being said, is it still possible running back where they go?
Definitely. Even though they have needs on defense and the offensive line, Chris, we are looking at Tyrone Wheatley and Rashawn Salaam on the board still, the preseason Heisman Trophy favorite and the guy who won the Heisman Trophy in Salaam. And for the Giants right now, Rodney Hampton only has 1 year left on his contract, has a lot of mileage on his legs, even though he's only 26 years old. And I think if they take a running back, they will then make Hampton available. But my understanding is that before the draft, they did not shop Hampton, but he could be available if they take one of those running back picks here, Chris.
All right, Morton, well, certainly running backs, except for Ki-Jana Carter at the top. You mentioned those two, and James Stewart from Tennessee. There are some teams in the 21, 22, 23, Chicago, Green Bay, and New England, that would like running backs. So maybe the Raiders do it too. So this is an interesting slot for someone to move up and get your choice of every back except Ki-Jana Carter. Now, Joe, Dave Meggett is now back with his old coach, Bill Parcells, with New England. The Giants bring in Herschel Walker. Obviously a bigger guy, obviously a little older guy. Similar role, or Herschel play a lot more than Meggett ever did for him?
Well, I think that he'll probably play in a similar role. I think you can't expect Herschel to go out there and carry the ball a lot. You look at yards rushing, 528. He carries the ball a little bit more than Meggett. The receptions, which is really where I think he brings the value, and also even as a kick returner. Even Herschel's touchdown production is greater. I happen to think that Herschel Walker here probably gives you a little bit more of a football player than Dave Meggett because of Dave's size. Again, Herschel's a little bit older, but you certainly have to think that the Giants are examining Tyrone Wheatley, Rashawn Salaam, as Mort mentioned. Wheatley is a guy that people think he was nicked up a lot. He could be one of the greatest players to come out of this draft. He could also possibly be like, say, a Curtis Dickey maybe, who will dangle that carrot in front of you and then get nicked a little bit and sit on the sidelines. But I don't think they lose a lot picking up a Herschel Walker, but Herschel can't play forever. It seems like he has, but I don't think he can continue much longer.
His second tour of duty in the Meadowlands, having played with the Generals in the USFL. Mel, let's go to your running back board. Carter obviously won. Then there's some jumbling of these next three guys. You have Wheatley second.
Wheatley, I think, is the 6th best player in this entire draft, and we're sitting here at 17. Had he come out last year, may have been the 4th pick in New England, so by going back to Michigan, may have cost himself some money. Rashawn Salaam, you're talking about a guy who has that great straight-ahead speed, over 2,000 yards. He was one of the top 10 to 15 players in this draft. He's still there. James Stewart from Tennessee really catapulted into the first round, had a steady, productive career. And James Stewart from Miami figures more as a second-round pick in most clubs' minds. Napoleon Kaufman's kind of a wild card. Not a great natural receiver, but decent hands, great return man, and a very effective runner for his size. He could be interesting late first, early second. Curtis Martin, best vertical jump, 41 inches of any player in the draft. Good, productive player when he was healthy, but he was nicked some. Sherman Williams, a very underrated player, will be a great second or third round pick. Aaron Hayden broke his leg. Last play of the first half against Vanderbilt, final game of the season. He would have been a second or third, now maybe a 4th or 5th. And Derrick Holmes, a big back, a sleeper type. a guy that would probably be a third or fourth rounder in most clubs' minds, Chris.
Well, this is the spot where we may see the running backs going again. That 21, 22, and 23, Chicago and Green Bay and New England all eyeing backs. And you might put the fullback Zellers in this group, too. So in the next 9 or 10 picks, you could see 4 or 5 backs go. Let's head to Tampa Bay now. Is that where we're going? To Gary Danielson. And Gary, why don't you try getting a suntan? What's going on?
It's good to be back with you. You know, talking about the two running backs, I've seen both Salam and Wheatley repeatedly in their college career. I don't think there's a downside to either guy personally, and I don't agree with Joe Theismann. I played with Curtis Dickey, and Ty Wheatley has far superior catching ability than a Curtis Dickey has. Had a few nicks at Michigan, but I see both of them as solid backs. Either way these teams go, I don't see a loss, except I think there's a little more upside potential with Ty Wheatley because of his speed. Let's go to Chris.
Gary, thank you. Talked to Rashaan Salam this week. He's a very competitive guy. It burned him up to hear scouts talk about Ki-Jana Carter and Tyrone Wheatley rated ahead of him. He wants the chance. He said he'd love to go head-to-head with Ki-Jana Carter in a training camp and try to see who would win the job. Now, his first choice for a team would be the L.A. Raiders. He loves the image. It's close to his home in San Diego. He's now getting into that part of the draft when he believes he could go. The Raiders and then Green Bay, another team that needs backs, has shown a lot of interest. So we'll see whether Wheatley or Salam is the next guy to go. Let's go to Hank Goldberg.
Chris, the Raiders had an interest in Rashaan Salam, too, so much so that they thought they were going to have to trade up to get him. So they'll be watching the Giants pick with great interest, because I think if the Giants take Salam, the Raiders then might go for Blake Brockemeyer or another offensive lineman. But you know the Raiders have needed running backs a long time. Back to Chris.
All right, Hank, the Giants have made their selection. The commissioner is eyeing the card. And we'll hear from the other part of the New York contingent here in the rafters at the Paramount Theater.
Running back from Michigan, Tyrone Wheatley. The Los Angeles Raiders are now on the clock.
Well, I think you can tell that Giant fans are pretty pleased with that selection. Tyrone Wheatley.
Please welcome New York Giants running back Tyrone Wheatley.
That didn't take long. Let's add this about Tyrone Wheatley. Whether or not he cost himself some money by not coming out last year, that'll be a debate. But what a novel concept. He stayed in school. He finished up. And he's still a first-round pick, and he's coming to New York. What a novel concept.
Well, I'll tell you, it's a great pick for the Giants. You're talking about a guy who really, talent-wise, should have been one of the first 5 or 6 players taken. And the only reason he slid down this far is the durability question. Look at the size, 230 pounds, but watch the speed, watch the ability to change direction and shift into a high gear. Nobody's going to catch this guy from behind. He runs legit 4.45, 4.50. Watch him catch the football. Now watch the speed and the power in the open field and the balance. Here he is on the sideline, taking it in for a touchdown. This is a play against Penn State that would have made a human highlight film. Watch the balance after he hurdles the tackler, kept his feet, and now he's off to the races before he's tackled and taken out of bounds down the road here. Interestingly enough, after that play, he went to the sidelines for a while. So that's the thing. Can he play 4 quarters? That's the reason why the Giants stole his services with the 17th pick, when in reality, Chris, based on talent, should have gone way, way higher in the draft.
Well, and Joe, even though he's Nick, here's a guy that in 92, 93, and in 94, oh, that's a great scene, isn't it?
A little bit different than Kyle Brady and the Jets.
Well, he's used to playing it with a raucous crowd, right? Over 100,000 up in Michigan, but so we'll add about 68,000 more. I was going to start to go it to you, Joe. 1,000 yards in 92, 1,000 yards in 93, 1,000 yards this last year. Productivity, yes, sir.
Yes, sir, he's got productivity, and what you really are impressed with when I look at statistics like this is his yards per attempt. 5.8 yards every time he touched the football. Touchdowns come, sometimes coaches like to feature backs down around the goal line. His wasn't the case. He averaged a lot.